The Phantom Ship. There's a saying that no one ever truly escapes the sea. And for those who encountered the Phantom Ship, it's a saying that comes with a terrible truth. Not even the most experienced sailors or the most seasoned adventurers dared to speak of it. At least, not to anyone who might live to tell the tale. But there are whispers, tales passed down like ghost stories, told in hushed voices around campfires or in dark corners of pubs. I'd heard them myself, back when I was still a man of the sea, but I never believed them, not until I saw it with my own eyes. It was the beginning of what was supposed to be an ordinary voyage, a routine crossing from the port of Cape Marrow to the shores of the Isle of Casper. The ship, the Celestia, was a sturdy vessel, the kind that had weathered countless storms and survived treacherous waters for decades. Our crew was solid, made up of men and women who had spent their lives navigating the unforgiving expanse of the ocean. None of us knew that we were about to encounter something that would forever change us. And none of us could have prepared for the horrors that would unfold. It started on the fourth night, under a crescent moon, when the sea was unnervingly still. There wasn't a ripple on the water, and the air had a strange chill to it, despite the heat of the evening. I was on deck, looking out over the water, trying to shake off the sense of dread that had been gnawing at the back of my mind since we'd set sail. The ocean was too quiet. It was as though it were holding its breath, waiting for something. That's when we saw it. At first, it was just a shadow on the horizon, a black mass that didn't quite make sense. It was too large to be a small boat, too solid to be an illusion. As the hours passed, the figure grew closer. It wasn't until it was almost upon us that we realized what we were looking at, a ship, but not one that belonged in our world. Its sails were tattered and torn, its hull blackened as though burned by some unseen fire. The ship was drifting silently toward us, as though it were being carried by the very wind that had died hours ago. We all stood frozen in disbelief, eyes wide, hearts pounding. Our captain, a seasoned man named Captain Harris, was the first to speak. His voice was thick with unease as he ordered the crew to prepare for a possible encounter. We hoisted the sails, but the wind refused to cooperate. The Celestia was dead in the water, and the Phantom Ship continued its steady approach. Its hull gleamed with an eerie, otherworldly light, as though the moon itself was drawn to it. As the distance between the ships closed, something began to happen, something that chilled me to my very core. The Celestia's crew started to feel it, a strange sensation, as though the air itself was thickening, pressing down on us. It became harder to breathe, and the whispers started. At first, they were faint, almost inaudible, like voices carried on the wind. But soon, they grew louder, filling the space around us. They weren't words, at least, not in any language we understood, but they were unmistakably human, filled with desperation, pain, and terror. "Is anyone else hearing that?" one of the crewmen asked, his voice trembling. But no one had the chance to answer. The ship was upon us now, and the whispers grew louder, turning into anguished cries. The Phantom Ship drifted alongside us, its sails billowing with an unnatural wind that didn't touch the Celestia. I could see the crew of the other ship now, if you could call them crew at all. They were pale figures, their faces gaunt and sunken, their eyes hollow pits. Their bodies seemed to flicker in and out of existence, like shadows unable to hold their form. One by one, They appeared at the railing of their ship, their hands outstretched, reaching toward us as if beckoning us. Captain Harris, who had been as unshakable as any man I knew, ordered everyone to remain below deck. But it was too late. The phantom ship, with its cursed crew, had already begun to invade our minds. It wasn't just the whispers now. Our bodies began to feel it. A weight, as though the very air was being sucked from our lungs. Panic set in as the crew scrambled to get below deck, but many didn't make it. I saw 2 men fall to their knees, gasping for air, their eyes bulging in terror. They died on the spot, their bodies lifeless before they even hit the ground. We sealed the hatches and tried to take refuge in the hold, but it was no use. The whispers followed us, slithering into our thoughts, until we could no longer tell where the voices of the dead ended and our own thoughts began. The ship creaked and groaned, as though something was twisting it from the inside out. The light from the lanterns flickered, casting strange shadows on the walls. I couldn't focus, couldn't think. The only thing I could hear was the endless, gut-wrenching wail of souls crying for release. Hours passed, maybe days. Time had no meaning now. When we finally emerged from below deck, what we saw was beyond anything we could have imagined. The phantom ship was still there, but now it was closer than before. We couldn't escape it. It was as though the 2 ships were bound together by some unholy force. We were trapped in its pull, and then the real terror began. The crew of the phantom ship began to move. They came over to us, stepping onto the deck of the Celestia with unnatural grace. Their eyes were locked onto us, their gaze unblinking and relentless. One by one, they began to reach for the crew, their cold hands touching us, seeping into our very souls. I could feel the coldness of their touch, seeping into my skin, crawling through my veins. I wanted to scream, to fight, but my body wouldn't obey. It was as if they were draining us, feeding on our fear, on our life force. Every time one of them touched a crew member, that person would fall, their skin turning cold and pale, their bodies collapsing as though life itself had been sucked from them. I tried to run, to escape, but there was nowhere to go. The ship was no longer our own. It was as if the phantom ship had taken control of it, twisting it into something else. The sky had gone black, the stars blotted out by an oppressive darkness. The sea was no longer the familiar expanse we knew. It was an abyss, an endless void. And then amidst the chaos, I saw it. The captain of the phantom ship, a towering figure cloaked in shadow, emerged from the depths of the other ship. He didn't speak, but his eyes, I'll never forget those eyes, were full of suffering, full of rage. He looked at us as if we were nothing more than cattle to be slaughtered. I could feel his presence in my bones, his hatred radiating from him like an infernal heat. He was the source of the curse. He was the reason we were trapped. Please, I begged, falling to my knees, let us go. We never meant to intrude. We just wanted to pass through. The captain's smile was a ghastly thing, full of teeth and malice. You should have known better than to sail these waters, he whispered, his voice a rasping hiss. No one sails through this place and lives to tell the tale. With that, he raised his hand, and the ship groaned once again, a horrible screeching sound that seemed to tear through the very fabric of reality. I watched in horror as the remaining crew members were dragged into the depths of the ship, their screams echoing in the hollow silence. The rest of us, myself included, were left alone, drifting on the Celestia, surrounded by nothing but darkness. The phantom ship had disappeared, just as it had appeared. We were alone, but we weren't free. We were trapped in the endless sea, bound to the ship and to the curse of the phantom ship. It's been years since that night, and I still don't know how I survived. Some days, I think the curse has followed me, whispers in the dark, shadows in the corners of my vision. I can't escape it, no matter how far I go. The Celestia is still out there, and so is the phantom ship. They are out there, waiting for the next soul foolish enough to cross their path. And when they do, they will never escape.